Hello students, so today we are going to start with chapter 11 and the chapter name is cell structure and microorganisms, and this is part of biology, and what we are going to do study in this chapter is about the cell structures, how the cell structures of different organisms look and what is the structure, and we will discuss also in detail about the microorganisms, right, in this particular chapter. And let's start studying the chapter. So in this, the objective is really very simple. We are starting first with the microorganisms. We will be able to discuss usefulness of the microbes in this. So as you all know, microorganisms are also called microbes. So I want you to just carefully look at this picture. You can even pause the video if you want. Just look at the picture and see, what do you think must have caused these things to happen? Okay, what particular thing in the surroundings or what must have caused these things to happen? When I say these things, I mean the cheese. So this is the first picture of a cheese. This is the manure. This is like the manure which is used in growing plants. Then the bread mold, which has this green layer of fungus on it, and the curd, right? So what must have caused these things to happen? Okay, now if you have answered for yourself, we can just start moving. So basically, as you all rightly answered, the microorganisms basically help in forming these. Now if in case of a manure, if you see manure may so the microorganisms basically they convert the peel and the garbage that is there, they convert that into a fertile manure, and that can be used for plants to grow. Similarly, the bacteria that we use, that is there called lactobacillus, that helps in forming from milk to the curd. Similarly, the cheese also, in the process of making cheese, microorganisms are also used. So this is one particular typical picture of microorganism called fungus, which has settled on the mold of the bread, right? Let's move forward. So what microorganisms are? So we will just look into the definition of microorganisms. So microorganisms are countless living organisms on earth, and these organisms cannot be seen by our eyes. They can be observed only under the microscope. They are very small and very tiny, and that's the reason they are called microorganisms. And they are present everywhere around us. That is air, water, soil, sewage, garbage, whatever you can think of, they are present there, even our bodies, right? Some microorganisms can live on their own, that is singly, and some exist in a group, that is in colonies. Now the organisms that can exist singly, you must have studied about them in your junior classes, that is amoeba and paramecium, and also chapter 4. So you know that amoeba and paramecium are the organisms that exist on their own, right? And they can exist singly because they are unicellular, one cell organism. Similarly, there are microorganisms which also exist in colonies. Right? Now, broadly, microorganisms or microbes are classified into 5 categories. Number 1 is algae. Algae basically, you see when you go and visit a pond or a lake, you see some green deposits floating on the um, surface of water. That basically is algae. So that is like a microorganism, right? Then fungus you see on molds of bread and bhakri that you eat. Then protozoa. Protozoa is another kind of organism that is found. Then bacteria. Bacteria is basically an organism that we see around us a lot of times. Like one good bacteria example, if I have to give you, then that is lactobacillus. Lactobacillus is the bacteria that converts milk into curd. So that is a good bacteria. Similarly, there are harmful bacteria also. Now, for viruses, I can give you ample examples. The current virus that you can think of is coronavirus. So there are viruses which are very harmful and they attack human beings. And one such example is coronavirus. Right? So how do these microorganisms grow and where do they grow exactly? So if we have to think of these things, we will first understand that they need a specific environment for growth and reproduction. And some microorganisms might require oxygen, some microorganisms do not require oxygen. So there are different organisms, different microorganisms, and some can exist maybe in different forms, some exist in different forms. Some microorganisms survive even in extreme and adverse temperatures like ocean floors, polar regions, hot water springs, even these kind of areas, right? And during, so how do these organisms survive in these kind of areas? They survive by maybe, covering themselves with a thick covering, and they stop their life processes when there is an adverse condition. And then when the favorable conditions return, jab sara acha time aa jata hai, then what they do is they remove that protective covering and they start their life processes again, right? That's how microorganisms function in severe conditions. Now, typically, if you have to know that how microorganisms grow, then if you talk about medium, where do they grow? So they grow on soil, water, decaying matter, right? All these places. The normal temperature range that you see is 25 to 70, 37 degrees Celsius. So this is the temperature range in which they grow. And if you talk about nutrition, what kind of nutrients do they require? So there are different organisms requiring different nutrients. But if you talk about a one specific type, then you know about algae. Algae is green in color because of the chlorophyll and the oxygen that it uses, right? There are different types of algae also, blue algae and different other algae, right? If you talk about atmosphere, then mostly microorganisms grow in a moist, humid and warm temperatures, right? So this is this typical table is going to give you a gist of what microorganisms need to grow, right? Now, like that, I told you that there are harmful and useful microorganisms. We will first look at what are the useful microorganisms. Okay. So, in this particular video, we are going to broadly discuss what are the useful microorganisms and how do they contribute to, helping us or help in nature, right? So microbes help in keeping the surroundings clean by decomposing the garbage, right? So they feed on the garbage and they help in keeping the surroundings clean by feeding on it. And like if you put vegetable peels in a in a pit and you see it after some days, you will see it has turned into a beautiful brown looking manure that can be used as your fertilizer for your plants, right? Microbes also help to increase the soil fertility by converting atmospheric nitrogen into useful compounds. So, microorganisms, what do? They take nitrogen from atmosphere and they convert it into useful compounds that are used for plants, right? Then we all know, we all love to eat idlis, dosas, and bhaturas and naans. So you all know that all this happens, the batter and the dough rises because of the fermentation, right? So that fermentation is also done by the microbes, right? So they also help in cooking, right? Then microbes also help in breaking down the complex compounds and help in formation of new compounds, right? So these new compounds can be really helpful for us. Similarly, if you talk about the fifth point, that we all, whenever we fall sick, the doctors prescribe us with antibiotics, right? So these antibiotics are also developed by using microbes. Imagine how important microbes are for for medicines. If there were no medicines, then how would we recover from illnesses, right? Microbes also help in developing vaccines and give us immunity against certain diseases. We all know a lot of vaccines are developed by using microbes, and that vaccine will help us get immunity from a particular disease. So these vaccines are also developed using microbes. They are also used in processes like production of ropes, tanning of skins, etc. So they're also used in difficult the other processes, like they are used in a biogas plant. So this biogas, this fertilizer that you get from a biogas plant is also used as a manure for plants. So this is how it develops. One more important thing that microbes help us in doing is that sometimes when oil containers go by ship or by water, a lot of oil spill happens because oil goes in large containers, and sometimes the oil also spills on the ocean floor or ocean surface. Now obviously, how will we clean that oil, right? So in that case, what happens is microbes come to our rescue. So there are microbes who only survive in, in conditions when there is oil, or they feed on oil, you can say. So these microbes also help in clearing that oil from the surface of ocean, right? And that's where they also help in you know in clearing that oil slick. So these are the basic eight, I have written 8 points of microbes, how they are useful to us. We will now, what you have to do is you have to pause your video. You can answer these 5 questions, take it 10 minutes independently. Pause the video and answer these questions for yourself, and then I will see you in the next video. Bye.